You're looking at the American-made rocket and spacecraft that will return American astronauts to the International Space Station from American soil for the first time since the retirement of the space shuttle, last flown nearly 9 years ago. Today, we're giving it another shot with our partners at SpaceX. Wednesday's first attempt was postponed due to that wild weather. But if all goes well today, we will mark a new first in NASA's storied history and usher in the commercial crew era of American spaceflight. There's astronaut Doug Hurley getting into his spacesuit, and he's being helped by one of the suit technicians there. He has flown into space 2 times before. He was the pilot on STS-127 and 135. And there's a wider shot. You can see astronaut Bob Behnken also in view now. Bob is to the right of your screen, and he also flew on 2 shuttle missions. Bob is a native of St. Ann, Missouri. And Doug is from Apple Lake in New York. He was born in Endicott, considers Apple Lake in his hometown. We can see now NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine. He's talking to the crew, and it looks like Associate Administrator Jim Morhard is also in the room, standing to the right of your screen.
And these are great moments to get a last chance to talk to the senior leadership of NASA as they're about to go off and launch into the cosmos. And I think when you look at how Bob and Doug complement each other, and how these SpaceX suits, you know, they really complement the astronauts too, because they're more form-fitted, they're custom-made, and this is a moment where they're getting ready to, you know, do the real deal. And Lauren, I think, you know, the integration of the suit and the vehicle and these seats is just really, really impressive. How y'all at SpaceX did that.
Yeah, the primary purpose of the spacesuit, it's a pressure suit. Now, the Dragon capsule is already pressurized, so even in the vacuum of space, the crew is safe when inside of Dragon. But in the unlikely event of an anomaly that causes the capsule to depressurize, we can actually flow oxygen or nitrox into the suit, and that will keep the astronauts pressurized in flight. So that's its main purpose. So it's that form and function, and some style there as well.
And for the kids out there that have 3D printers or have 3D printed, the actual helmets were made by 3D printing. So you could be a spacesuit designer yourself because you already have the skill set, and or fly in space one day if you wanted to.
And we are looking at a live picture now of Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley walking down that hallway in the astronaut crew quarters. We just saw Doug wave at the screen, and they're just turning the corner, getting inside that elevator. And this, you can't see it from here, but there is a banner hanging there. You can kind of see it in the back. There's a banner hanging on the wall of the elevator with the signatures of all the people who worked on this mission. So it was really important for them to hang that up in there so Bob and Doug could see it. And there the doors are opening.
Here they come.
Great.
And there they are, NASA astronauts.
Small crowd, but big cheers.
NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley, Doug on the left, Bob on the right, waving to the crowd there to cheer them on. And there are their families right in front of them.
The virtual hugs, a very special moment. Fist bumps.
Are you going to be on good behavior? Are you going to listen to Mommy and make her life easy?
You can hear them.
Rapid departure from the Astro van.
Yes, I would say so.
And their flight surgeon is in the front seat in the passenger side, taking the journey along with them.
As I mentioned last time, we always think about the technology and the rockets, but this is what it's all about, the families coming together, supporting the families, us working together as a team to ensure they get up there safely and back home safely for their families.
I couldn't hear everything they were saying, but I did catch Bob telling his son to be good for Mom and make her life easy. As a parent, I appreciate that.
see that prominent NASA meatball.
There's our hangar. We process Falcon Heavy in there. There are other boosters in that hangar as well. And the rocket and Dragon that is on the pad right now was put together, or rather finally integrated inside of that hangar and then rolled out to that pad to go up vertical.
And there it is. That shot really gives you a sense of the scale of the Falcon 9 rocket. Those Teslas look teeny, teeny, tiny, making their way up there.
Yeah, really cool watching the Teslas pull up, driving on the launch pad just a few feet away from the vehicle. This is awesome and getting really excited over here.
Looks like they've already gotten out of the car and they are walking up to the elevator that will carry them all the way up to the 255-foot level, and then they'll have a couple of steps to get up to the level where the crew access arm is.
Core on countdown 1 at 2 hours 57 minutes. The crew has arrived at the pad on schedule.
But there they are, taken in the sight, craning to see the top of the Falcon 9 rocket. It's 230 feet tall if you round up, and then Crew Dragon is another 27 feet from the bottom of the trunk to the top of the nose cone. So
SpaceX Dragon, good morning, Anna.
Dragon, go NASA, go SpaceX, Godspeed, Bob and Doug.
America has launched. And so rises a new era of American spaceflight, and with it the ambitions of a new generation continuing the dream. 20 seconds into flight, stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Plus 30 seconds into this historic mission. Flying crew on board Dragon and Falcon 9, and look at them go.
Falcon power telemetry nominal.
M1D throttle down.
We're throttling down to get ready for the period of maximum dynamic pressure. We're in the throttle bucket. Reports say all systems are go.
Vehicle is supersonic.
We've exceeded Mach 1 on the Falcon 9.
M1D throttle up.
We're throttling back up to full power as we're through max Q.
Copy, 1 Bravo.
And we heard that 1 Bravo call out. That's just the second abort zone that they're in. They'll continue to be on this until the first stage has done its job and they switch over to the second. At this point, Bob and Doug pulling about 2.3 Gs, 2.3 times the Earth's gravity, already moving at over 1,500 miles per hour.
We've heard the call out for MVAC engine chill. That's getting the MVAC engine ready to light. That'll come at about 2:44 into flight. Right now, everything continuing to look good. Next major event coming up is going to be the triple. We'll have main engine cutoff of the 9 first stage engines, stage separation, and then ignition of the second stage engine to continue to carry astronauts into orbit. Coming up in about 20 seconds.
M1D throttle down.
We heard we're throttling down the Merlin engines on the first stage. And we have Miko.
Miko.
2 Alpha. Falcon stage separation confirmed.
Copy 2 Alpha.
MVAC ignition.
All right, we have stage separation confirmed. The first stage beginning its flight back. The second stage being powered by that single Merlin 1D vacuum engine has ignited and is now carrying Bob and Doug into orbit. So they're going to continue under the power of this second stage.
Stage 2 propulsion is nominal.
Which will cut off at SECO, or second engine cut off at about 8 minutes and 44 seconds into today's flight. So a little over 5 minutes to go still on this second stage. You heard the call out to Alpha, so they're now in the longest abort zone that carries them all the way from about North Carolina up the eastern seaboard, almost to Canada. Things looking good, though, getting good call outs, nominal propulsion on that second stage. Bob and Doug continuing to make their way into orbit.
Dragon SpaceX nominal trajectory.
Acquisition of signal in Bermuda.
SpaceX Dragon nominal trajectory.
All right, here in nominal trajectories, the Dragon pointed in the right direction, continuing to make their flight uphill. Heard acquisition of signal Bermuda. That's one of the other ground stations that they're using to get telemetry and data back from this spacecraft.
Stage 2 propulsion is still nominal.
A little over 4 minutes, 40 seconds into the flight. Bob and Doug flying at more than 5,600 miles
Dragon
per hour.
SpaceX nominal trajectory.
Already almost 200 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center. Nominal trajectory continuing. And while they continue uphill, looks like we are getting a view of the first stage as well.
Yep, on your right screen, you can see that first stage with the grid fins deployed. It's making its way back to attempt to land on our drone ship, Of Course, I Still Love You today. And we're just about a couple minutes away from the entry burn, and that's where 3 of the 9 Merlin engines do ignite to help slow the vehicle down as it re-enters back into the Earth's atmosphere. And then after the entry burn will be the landing burn, which is just a single engine
Dragon SpaceX
burn.
nominal trajectory.
And you heard
Nominal
starting
trajectory.
chill for entry burn.
there's that call out. They are still on a nominal trajectory on Dragon, still on second stage, and that's that MVAC engine on second stage on your left screen. Again, on your right screen is that first stage booster coming back towards our drone ship, Of Course, I Still Love You. We're about a minute away from entry burn.
Meanwhile, that second stage continuing to power Dragon into orbit. Again, if you're keeping an eye on that timer, that's going to continue to burn until 8 minutes and 44 seconds into flight. So a little over 2 minutes from now, we'll hear the call out SECO. It'll then be a little
Stage 2 propulsion is still good.
A little over 3 minutes until Dragon physically separates from the second stage of the Falcon 9 after the upper
Dragon
stage gets a
SpaceX
chance.
nominal trajectory.
Dragon copies, nominal trajectory.
Continuing to check in with Bob and Doug as they are on a nominal trajectory. Just about 10 seconds away from that first stage, starting that entry burn on your right screen. We should be able to see that view live.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
And there is that entry burn beginning. This burn lasts about 36 seconds long.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
Well, entry burn continues. We're just about a minute away from SECO. We'll have a number of events all happen in rapid succession. It'll be the second engine cutoff.
Stage 1
we'll
entry
be
burn
looking for that stage 1 landing burn shortly after.
Yeah, actually, just within a few seconds of each other. It's such a cool view on your left screen, seeing Bob and Doug on Dragon. Right now you can see the displays that they are seeing right now themselves.
Terminal guidance.
MVAC throttle step.
We are coming up 25 seconds or so away from SECO, or second engine cutoff.
This is also the point where Bob and Doug are experiencing their highest G-force. We're seeing the counter tick up to right about 1.8.
Copy, Shannon.
You heard Shannon, so that just means they're in their final abort zones. If they were to abort at this point, it would either be an abort to orbit or to land off the coast of Ireland. Standing by for second
Stage 1 landing
cutoff
startup.
confirmation.
MVAC throttle step. MVAC shutdown.
Stage 1 landing winner.
Confirmation of SECO's second engine cutoff.
Now we are waiting for our first stage to make its way to our drone ship. Of course, I still love you.
Dragon SpaceX nominal orbital insertion.
Launch escape
Confirmation
system is
nominal
Dragon
orbital
copies.
insertion.
Nominal
Stage 1
orbital
landing leg
insertion.
deploy.
And what you're seeing on your screen is a live view of our drone ship, where our first stage will be coming down. Looks like we lost that live view, but we'll wait for confirmation of that landing shortly here.
Falcon 9 first stage is successfully landed.
And
aboard
there you
course
can see
XLR.
on your screen, Falcon 9 has landed. This is
Bravo!
Falcon 9 to carry
Acquisition of signal
humans to
from-
orbit, so very exciting for us. And as you can see on your right screen, Bob and Doug are still making their way to their targeted orbit.
M1D to recovery 1.
So exciting today.
M1D.
It doesn't stop.
It does not stop.
All right, we did hear again that call out, good orbital insertion, so that means Falcon 9 and Dragon right now exactly where they're supposed to be.
M1D to FRC on recovery 1.
And it's right at about 12 minutes
This is FRC.
when
Can you
Dragon will
switch over to
separate.
ECF9?
Looks like we saw a 0G indicator floating around there. I know Bob and Doug owe us a little bit about what exactly that is that they brought up with them.
And before separation, before Dragon initiates separation from the second stage, they do make sure to make, they do ensure that the vehicle is not spinning and it is in good condition before we separate.
That's right, the upper stage does small attitude maneuver using some cold gas thrusters built into the rocket body itself.
Exactly. So we do expect that separation to occur in about a minute from now, but they do wait until they have full confirmation that it is ready to separate. Such cool views. I cannot get over this view that we are seeing right now. Bob and Doug on the right screen, inside of Crew Dragon, out in space.
Yeah, already 200 kilometers over planet Earth, or a little over 124 miles, traveling in excess of 2,700 meters, 27,000 meters per second, or about 16,000 miles per hour. Again, we're just standing by. That separation event should be coming up shortly. Then they'll begin a series of checks on the Draco thrusters that are going to be used to maneuver and then power Dragon on its flight to the
It's
International Space
27,000 kilometers
Standing
per
by
hour.
for separation.
More.
Expected loss of signal, wallows.
It sounds like we had an expected LOS loss of signal with one of the ground stations. Waiting for confirmation now of that
Dragon separation confirmed.
Dragon
Yay.
separation confirmed.
There is a great view right in front of you.
Nice.
Dragon separating.
Separation confirmed.
And there's that call out. Dragon is now officially making its way to the International Space Station today.
Dragon SpaceX with that separation call. We have a few words for you from our Falcon 9 team.
Standing by.
Dragon, Chief Engineer on Dragon to Ground. Bob Doug, on behalf of the entire launch team, thanks for flying with Falcon 9 today. We hope you enjoyed the ride and wish you a great mission.
Thanks, Bala. Congratulations to you and the F9 team for the first human ride for Falcon 9, and it was incredible. Appreciate all the hard work, and thanks for the great ride to space.
Copy all.
Oh, and like, proud of you guys and the rest of the team. Thank you so much for what you've done for us today, putting America back into low Earth orbit from the Florida coast.
Copy all. Good luck. Godspeed.
You may not realize it, but this is a huge deal for humanity.
All right, so Bob and Doug are in
Dragon
space.
SpaceX, we confirm nominal E-class activation and service section Draco checkouts. Nose cone deploys in progress.
Copy all. We're monitoring.
One thing is flying with cargo, but another thing, another whole huge deal is flying with humans.
Deploying, so again, that nose cone is going to open up a little bit more than 90 degrees, goes up to about, I think, 105 degrees, and that's going to expose the actual docking ring and the hatch that they're going to be going through once they attach to the International Space Station, and also 4 of those Draco thrusters, we call them the forward bulkhead thrusters, they're going to be used for these major phase burns or firings of those thrusters to actually raise their orbit gradually over the coming hours. Also heard good activation of the ECLIS, that's the Environmental Control and Life Support System. That's everything controlling their atmosphere, just keeping Dragon a nice, safe, habitable environment where they're going to be living for the next 19 hours until they arrive at the space station.
Right, exactly. And Falcon 9's job may be done for today, but the mission is not over. Crew Dragon's job is not done. As you can see, Bob and Doug are still inside Crew Dragon, making their way. It will be a 19-hour trip to the International Space Station before they dock tomorrow morning. And such cool views. I love that we can get these live views here and see and watch what they're doing now that they are in orbit.
Yeah, it's incredible to just be looking over their shoulder, to be along for the ride. And we're going to be with them, and we're going to be with all of you the entire way for their journey to the space station. We're going to be covering live throughout. Bob and Doug will obviously have a sleep period where they'll get about 8 hours of sleep a little bit later today before they wake up for all of their final approach. One of the major things we are looking forward to in the next couple of hours is going to be their first turn at the controls. So they're actually going to be using those touchscreen displays to take control and manually pilot Dragon. We'll walk you through what that's going to look like, and assuming we have some good ground station coverage, we'll be able to get views from right inside Dragon, looking over their shoulder as they manipulate the controls at the display. But I mean, we had a smooth ride uphill, both stages of the Falcon 9 doing their job, placing Bob and Doug in orbit. I mean, this is a day, this is a historical day. This is us kicking off that new era of space flight that we've all been talking about and longing for since the Space Shuttle program came to an end in 2011.
Yes.
And the weather cooperated.
Yes, second time's a charm.
Right.
All right, so day for the history books. As you can see, we have lost some live signal there, but the mission still continues, and we're going to send it over to KSC to continue broadcasting live with you.
Loss of signal in Newfoundland.
Yeah, Jesse and Dan, we are just in awe over here. When I woke up this morning and looked at the weather forecast, I was like, man, we're going to be back here on Sunday, but we did it, and the room cleared out. Everybody was outside watching, and inside the lights were shaking, the cameras were shaking. Lauren came back in with tears in her eyes. This is really amazing.
I can't believe it. I saw it with my own eyes. This is, I'm a little bit speechless. Just so grateful that we got them up there, and there's a lot more to go. But I'm so happy they're safe right now. I'm just so happy.
Yeah. Leland, you were talking about it. It's amazing what we can do when we work together.
Yes, American astronauts on an American rocket from American soil, showing you what Americans can do when we come together as a team and blast Doug and Bob off to the cosmos. This is what it's all about, and their families and everyone is working together to take them up to space safely. So I don't know what to say. That rocket fuel is still in my veins, and I want to go get on the rocket.
Well, it's too late now. Maybe the next one.
I know.
But we want to go over to Daryl at OSB2. He's there with the administrator, who hopefully has more words than we do, because we're still kind of speechless. Daryl?
Pretty incredible here, Marie, at the Operations Support Building, where a chorus of applause has been happening from the beginning of launch and throughout the various stages. Some very special guests were here to watch it. That includes President Donald Trump, Vice President Mike Pence, and NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine, who joins me now. And you were with the President and the Vice President. America's back, launching human astronauts again. Tell me how you feel about that, and tell me about the President watching launch and what happened there.
So this has been a long time coming. It's been 9 years since we've launched American astronauts on American rockets from American soil, and now it's done. We have done it. It's been way too long. I want to give a lot of credit to Charlie Bolden. He was my predecessor as the NASA administrator. He fought hard for this program at a time when it didn't get any support in Congress. We now have an administration that is fully supportive of our spaceflight initiatives, not just on the exploration, discovery, going to the moon, onto Mars, but also from a Space Force perspective. Our budgets are going up, things are strong, and today was just just an amazing day. You know, one of the things the President did right out of the gate when he became President is he created what's called the National Space Council. And he put the Vice President as chairman of the National Space Council. And on that National Space Council, you've got the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Commerce, the Secretary of Transportation, the Secretary of Education, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, all of these different amazing individuals that deal with space day in and day out. A lot of people don't realize how many parts of the federal government deal with space. And the Vice President invited those members of the National Space Council here as well. So we just had, and then we had members of Congress, bipartisan members of Congress, Republicans and Democrats, who have been involved in supporting this program, you know, for a long time now. So I'll just tell you, I'm breathing a sigh of relief, but I will also tell you I am not going to celebrate until Bob and Doug are home safely. Tomorrow they're going to dock to the International Space Station. Tonight I'm heading to Houston to be at the Johnson Space Center when that happens. So it's a bit of a relief. The nose cone is now open. It's now deployed, which means that you know, now we're going to go into some burns. We're going to have some phasing burns. We're going to have some you know, boosting burns, and we're going to get as much as we can in alignment with the International Space Station as early as possible here. But also, I know it's hard, but you know, the big thing that we need to do now is we got to get Bob and Doug, who have now gone through this exercise twice. They need to get some rest. But I can guarantee you there will be no rest for a good amount of time while they're up there in orbit.
And they are certainly on their way, and a lot of people joining us for this entire celebration and watching it. We just heard 10 million people watching live as this launch happened, and President Donald Trump becoming the third sitting president to watch a launch live from the Kennedy Space Center. The first.
To be clear, I think he's the only sitting president to watch American astronauts launch on a brand new rocket that has never launched before, and that's a big risk. You know, he also said we're going to go to the moon by 2024. That means he's putting himself at risk to say, look, I'm going to be accountable, potentially, I'm going to be accountable to the initiatives that I put forward. And I think we have not had that kind of leadership for space in a very, very long time. And we're so grateful for it.
What was it like watching the launch with the president? How did he react?
Oh, I'll tell you, it's obviously something that is near and dear to him. He said it a year and a half ago. He put it in the State of the Union speech. He said, we're going to launch American astronauts on American rockets from American soil. And of course, I was like, in my head, I'm thinking, we better get after this. Of course, we've worked overtime to make it happen. We might be a little behind schedule, but we got it done, and we got it done safely. We're knocking on wood, but so far so good. It's looking good.
You personally, Jim, as that rocket was lifting off and you felt that rumble?
Yeah.
What'd you feel? What'd you experience?
Well, I was praying. I'm not going to lie to you. I was praying. I was praying for Bob and Doug. I was praying for their families. I was praying for their safe return, even though they're just going. But man, I'll tell you, it was, I've heard that rumble before, but it's a whole different feeling when you've got your own team on that rocket. And they are our team. They are America's team. This is Launch America. This is everything that America has to offer in its purest form. And times are tough right now. There is no doubt. We've got the coronavirus pandemic. We have other challenges as a country. But I hope this moment in time is an opportunity for everybody to reflect on humanity and what we can do when we work together, when we strive, and when we achieve. And if this can inspire a young child to become the next Elon Musk or the next Jeff Bezos or the next Sir Richard Branson, then that's what this is all about.
Or the next Jim Bridenstine.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't put me in that category, but.
Well, we appreciate your leadership for the Space Agency at this time, and congratulations on an amazing day in the launch.
Thank you. It's been a great ride.
All right, very good. Marie, we'll send it back to you in the studio.
Doug and Bob are on course to arrive at the International Space Station tomorrow, May 31st at 10:27 a.m. Eastern Time. And we'll be staying on the air for continuous live coverage along the entire ride to the station. So though our coverage here is concluding, we will turn it over to the teams in Hawthorne and Houston to take us through the next phases of the Demo 2 mission, all the way through hatch opening and a welcome ceremony on the space station for Bob and Doug tomorrow.
That's right. And as you follow along, we invite you to tune into a post-launch news conference that's happening here at 6:30 this evening Eastern Time on NASA TV. We'll have NASA and SpaceX leaders here to take questions live on this unprecedented achievement in human spaceflight. And in addition to NASA TV, you can follow along always on Twitter at @NASA and nasa.gov for mission updates as it progresses. Here now are highlights from the mission so far. May 30th, 2020. Remember this day. You'll have this memory forever. The day America returned astronauts to orbit from U.S. soil.
Wow, we're making history again.
Let's go.
Well, we do want to thank Marie, the entire KSC team, for that great launch. Marie, Lauren, Leland, it was great being with you guys the whole time. But as we just said, the mission has only now just begun. Right now, Bob and Doug are flying free inside of Dragon after that successful separation from Falcon 9. We've got just under 19 hours until they arrive at the space station. We're going to be here with you the entire trip.
Immediately after Dragon separated from Falcon 9, it began what we call activation and rendezvous phase of the mission. During this phase, Dragon is configured for on-orbit operations. The phase begins after separation of Dragon from Falcon 9 and ends with the completion of the final co-elliptic burn. Our initial orbit today is 190 kilometers by 205 kilometers, with those values representing the perigee and apogee of the orbit, or the lowest and highest points over the Earth. That means the orbit isn't a perfect circle, but more like a slight ellipse.
Over the next 19 hours, Dragon's going to execute a series of burns which will gradually raise its orbit to align more closely with the station. There are going to be 5 major burns or firing of those Draco thrusters on Dragon that are going to bring it close to station before we begin our final approach maneuvers. The first one is coming up in just a little bit, and it's the phase burn. Right now, teams are doing their go-no-go to get ready for that, and it's performed at the first apogee, or the highest point, of the initial orbit, and that's going to raise Dragon's perigee to a higher altitude.
And after a calculated time, which is based on what our orbital data shows us, the boost burn raises Dragon's orbit until it's just 10 kilometers lower than the space station, followed soon after by the close co-elliptic burn to place Dragon on orbit roughly co-elliptic with the space station. This means Bob and Doug will be about 10 kilometers lower than the station during their entire orbit around the Earth. The fourth maneuver is the transfer burn, where we raise Dragon's apogee, or highest point of its orbit, to just 2.5 kilometers below the station. And we round everything out with a final co-elliptic burn to once again maintain a constant orbit beneath station. It's just 2.5 kilometers below.
Then we get into the approach initiation and final stages of Dragon's rendezvous with the space station. This is also where we start what we call joint operations between the Dragon control team here in Hawthorne and the space station flight controllers in Mission Control Houston. The teams transition to those integrated ops roughly 45 minutes prior to approach initiation, which is another burn that really means Dragon's getting close. During the approach, SpaceX flight controllers work in tandem with the NASA team in Houston to activate and test out a number of systems on Dragon, including establishing bidirectional communications with the station using a system known as C2V2, which stands for Common Communications for Visiting Vehicles. They also set up a data stream from Dragon to the station, just giving another path for Dragon telemetry or data about its performance to come down to the ground and giving an additional command capability to astronauts on board the station. They'll also maneuver Dragon to the proper attitude and then initialize the navigation sensors used for that very slow and methodical approach to station.
At approximately 5:24 a.m. Pacific time, that's tomorrow morning, Draco thrusters on Dragon will fire for the approach initiation burn when Dragon is about 2.5 kilometers below station and just about 7 kilometers behind it. This will swing Dragon up until it is about 400 meters directly below the station, and this maneuver will also move Dragon inside one of those 2 safety zones around the station that requires a set of go-no-go pulls with the different control teams. The first zone is called the approach ellipsoid, which is an imaginary shape measuring about 4 kilometers by 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers, which is essentially a large 3-dimensional oval. Before Dragon is given permission to move inside the ellipsoid, referred to by the teams as the AE, it is configured to be on what is known as a 24-hour safe trajectory. This means that if Dragon lost all control...
Dragon, SpaceX for update.
If Dragon lost all control to its thrusters, it would be at least 24 hours before its
Go ahead, Jake.
trajectory would move inside the approach ellipsoid.
Okay, for suit docking, we're still waiting for cabin to be below 25C and trending down. It looks like it's on the way there, but not quite. And the second item is during the burn, we may have intermittent comm and due to pointing, and this is expected.
We're just listening.
Okay, copy the cabin temp and suit doffing and intermittent comm during the burn.
Good read back, and we are go for the phase burn. Looks like it's in about 12 minutes.
Dragon, go for the phase burn.
We're just getting a couple of quick updates. They're still wearing those suits that they've been in since we saw them suit up in the O&C building several hours ago. Once temperature just comes down inside the cabin a little bit, they'll get to go to doff or just take their suits off. And you just heard we're less than 12 minutes now from that first burn called the phase burn. Getting back to where we're going to be tomorrow, though, once Dragon arrives at just 400 meters below the station, it's going to be what's known as Waypoint 0, and that's the first checkpoint during our approach. The vehicle can hold at 400 meters, or it can continue on if all the systems check out, and then it'll begin the approach to Waypoint 1. By this point, the teams will do a go-no-go for Dragon to move inside the keep-out sphere. It's another one of those zones around the station, and it's an imaginary sphere with a radius of about 200 meters. It's just another chance to confirm all the guidance, navigation, and control systems are working correctly on Dragon before we move it in really close to station. And it carries a similar requirement to the AE that Jesse talked about, where if Dragon lost all control of its thrusters, it would not go inside of that sphere for at least 4 orbits or about 6 hours instead of the 24 hours for the approach ellipsoid.
Dragon's move from Waypoint 0 to Waypoint 1 will swing it up and out in front of the station, pausing at a distance of approximately 220 meters. At this point, it will be on what we call the docking axis, which essentially means it is directly in front of the docking port. Bob and Doug are headed to the forwardmost port of the International Space Station, the Node 2 forward port. That is where Dragon docked last year on the Demo 1 mission and where one of the 2 international docking adapters is located. These were installed for new commercial spacecraft flights and any other future spacecraft that also use the international docking standard.
Before moving into the final waypoint, the crew will execute their second manual flight test, except this time they'll be in what we call the near field. That just means they're close to the station. The crew will actually command a hold when they're 220 meters away from the station and conduct a series of maneuvers. So it'll be Doug and Bob at the controls. First, they'll fly Dragon to the center line of the docking approach, just precisely lining it up with that docking port. Then they'll do a number of translational maneuvers, so using the Draco thrusters on Dragon to move it around the different axes. And then they'll always be checking in with the ground on how much propellant is used. Again, translational is just you're moving back, forward, side to side. When we refer to attitude maneuvers, it's where you're pointing. But once they're complete with that, they'll transition control back over to the Dragon flight computer to resume that automated docking.
And once Dragon is only 20 meters away from Waypoint 2, that the spacecraft focuses on aligning its docking system with the docking adapter. Dragon will then fly in and make contact with the IDA, giving us what we call a soft capture. The soft capture ring then retracts until sensors indicate it's time for hooks to drive in place to give us a hard capture and firmly secure Dragon to the station. Then it's time for leak checks and hatch opening, which is currently timelined to come about 2 hours following docking.
We're going to be here with you the entire way, and again, it's going to be a 2-team effort once Dragon gets really close. So why don't we jump over to Gary, International Space Houston. It's got to be exciting seeing that launch and knowing that they're on the way to you. How's the team doing, Gary?
Dan, there is allotment from the room. We are closely monitoring Dragon's few burns that are coming up here. You both did a great job of describing some of those. From the International Space Station side of things, we're really in a monitor mode for much of the flight. Once it gets closer to some of the docking portion of the flight that you were going through, that's when we'll start really kicking into gear for joint operations. Just when the Dragon is just about 80 kilometers away, we'll start doing our checkouts of a system called C2V2. That's the communication system. Dragon, through the most of its flight, will be talking or communicating with the TDRS satellites, geosynchronous satellites around the Earth. Right about the 80-kilometer part, we'll be turning on the C2V2. That is the common communication for visiting vehicles and establishes a link between the International Space Station and Dragon. It'll be turned on for some S-band connections and testing some of the radio signals as Dragon makes its approach. Really, though, we'll be monitoring the approach through some of those final burns. Once it's in front of the International Space Station, the space station has a few things that it needs to do from the attitude control side of things to really prepare the station for docking, switching some of the thrusters over to the Russian side and really relying on those control moment gyros and the angular momentum there to keep the International Space Station nice and steady. Once it makes its approach, it'll really be up to Bob and Doug to perform those final maneuvers and into docking. Chris Cassidy, though, will be monitoring from the inside. He's got a tool called the RPOP, and he'll be monitoring the approach from the inside of the International Space Station. Chris Cassidy, through the past couple days, has been preparing the International Space Station for Bob and Doug, getting some of the beds that they'll be sleeping in on the International Space Station ready, really preparing some of the tools that he'll use for the monitoring, and then when Doug and Bob are nice and close to the International Space Station, opening up the hatch and getting some air right between the hatch where Bob and Doug will enter the International Space Station. Everything's still looking good from the space station side of things. We should be exiting a loss of communication now and going back and getting some views from stations. Still having great views from Bob and Doug incrementally. We'll be following right along through the duration of this flight until it docks just 19 hours from now. That's it from us in here in Mission Control Houston. Dan, I'll stand it back to you over in Hawthorne.
All right. Thank you, Gary. Now joining me here in Hawthorne, though, we'll get her a second to get mic'd up and everything, but SpaceX's H.O.T.A.S, who was with us for Demo 1, we got to do the splashdown together. Now we're going to do kind of that initial flight on orbit with Bob and Doug. So, Kate, thanks for jumping in.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm H.O.T.A.S. I'm a senior engineer here at SpaceX. Really excited to be joining you for the Demo 2 webcast here with Dan, like he said, in front of mission headquarters here in Hawthorne. So, like he was saying before, Dragon is going to be performing a couple of different things going on in the next few hours. We're going to have 5 major burns, but at the moment, we are coming up to the first burn, which is the phase burn.
And that's going to be, again, the first firing of those thrusters, those Draco thrusters. It'll be using both the forward bulkhead, so the ones that were uncovered by that nose cone, and also the ones around the service section or around kind of the bottom portion. And we've been looking at our timeline, and it's expected to last about 492 seconds is what they have it in there. So it's going to be a fairly long firing. And again, these are done just to gradually raise up the orbit. So essentially what we're doing is we're waiting until we're at the highest point of our orbit over the Earth. We're firing the thrusters, and that raises up the lowest point of our orbit. And then we just circle everything out with what we call a co-elliptic burn once we get back to that other side of the orbit. So they're going to just gradually do that over the coming hours until they're at the International Space Station. And then it's time for docking.
Yeah. So, like Dan said, we have a total of 12 Draco thrusters on board of Dragon. In addition to the 4 bulkhead Draco thrusters, which we'll be using upcoming, there are 12 more Dracos in the service section, which is the area along the lower part of the Dragon capsule. These will be used in every burn and are primarily there to help maintain Dragon's attitude, which is especially important when doing the finely tuned approach into docking. Now, they can also be used for smaller translational maneuvers, but right now we're approaching the phase burn, and that should be about 3 minutes.
Yep. So we're just going to continue to stand by, wait for that phase burn. That'll be the first major on-orbit event since they've done all of their checkouts and the nose cone is open. And then we'll be standing by. We should be having the first manual flight test coming up in just about 50 minutes from now, if everything goes well. So that'll be our first chance to watch Bob and Doug actually fly Dragon. And so, I mean, that's going to be really cool. Again, it's designed to fly itself the entire time, but it's the crew has the ability to step in should they need it. And they'll actually be stepping in and taking control. So they'll be flying a brand new spacecraft for the very first time.
Yeah, something that I like to remind my friends and family, as we've been leading up to this launch for the last several days, this is a demonstration mission. And so like that far-field manual flight test that we'll have coming up a little bit later, Bob and Doug, they're test pilots. This kind of mission is what they live for. for. If I remember correctly, it was 1981. Shuttle Columbia was the last time that we tested a completely new vehicle. So it's been a long time since anybody has had the opportunity to do a test flight like Bob and Doug are doing today and will be continuing to do for the next 19 hours. So that opportunity for them
Dragon SpaceX for suit doffing plan.
that opportunity for them to take control of the Dragon capsule if, for some reason that they need to, that is one of the test objectives.
Yeah, we're right now, cabin environments are stable. Our plan is to give you the go for suit doffing after the phase burn. And we are seeing Draco Orbit 2, Draco 4 is a little bit a low temperature out of family. We're not tracking any immediate concerns, but just wanted to make you aware that we are looking into that.
Okay, copy that, SpaceX. We'll plan on suit doffing after the burn, and then the Orbit 2 Drake 4's low temp.
Good readback.
All right, so the crew is going to stay in their suits until after this phase burn, which we should be hearing start in just about a minute from now.
Da, no ne je nešto seriozno.
We should be just 10
GNC
seconds
confirms
away
good
from
deorbit
this
burn.
burn. And we have confirmation the first burn is in progress. Again, this is the first of the 5 major maneuvers. This one's called the phase burn, using those forward bulkhead thrusters. So just those 4 Dracos at the very top underneath the nose cone to do these what we call delta V maneuvers. So just big changes in velocity that we're going to do to gradually raise this orbit up over the coming hours. So we're watching some of the screens. We're able to see the burn is in progress. It's expected to last for several minutes. So we'll just keep an ear out, make sure that everything goes well, and then we'll get a report pretty much the same time the crew does on how the burn goes. So we're really just looking for those words, good burn, after it's complete.
Like we said, this is the first of 5 major burns that we will be performing over the coming hours. So this is basically the first major step in the free flight of Demo 2.
Expected loss of signal, Diego Garcia.
We're about 2 minutes into our phase burn. Everything looking good so far.
And Dragon SpaceX for awareness, burn is nominal so far.
All right, we have confirmation that burn is nominal thus far.
We concur, thank you.
And again, and Bob and Doug have insight into how this is going the whole way just through those touchscreen control panel that they have right in front of them, those 3 screens. And when we get video inside the cabin back, hopefully as we're doing that manual flight test, you'll be able to get a really good close-up look at how they kind of have their window into Dragon itself. And we are coming up on 3 minutes into our first major burn for their on-orbit path to the station. If you're just now joining, we are 3 minutes 45 seconds into the phase burn. This is the first major burn. You're getting a look inside of the SpaceX Mission Control Center here in Hawthorne. This is the team that's going to be responsible for looking over Dragon and Bob and Doug on their flight up to the International Space Station. We'll have some intermittent video comm with the Dragon spacecraft itself, only when we're over some ground stations and only when we're doing some of these different maneuvers. But right now, we're just continuing to listen in. That first burn's going well. Every single one of these burns is critical to actually making it to the International Space Station. So it seems like a pretty quiet time right now, but I mean, thrusters are firing on the Dragon spacecraft as we speak. They've been doing so for over 4.5 minutes. So we've got a little under 3 minutes to go, I think. Everything's looking good so far.
Dan, I remember during the Demo 1 splashdown or deorbit, basically leaving the International Space Station webcast, you know, we were going back and forth saying that it feels like it takes forever to do anything, and it's the same deal going up to the ISS. Everything is super controlled, very precise, and very exact in terms of timing and adjustments. So, like Dan said, this is a critical moment, and definitely one of the first exciting events that we have in Dragon, as it now is free flying.
Just to let you know, anytime we have video with the crew during the flight, we'll do our best to bring it to you. So we're just getting a quick check-in on the teams in Mission Control in Hawthorne. I mean, these are the people behind the scenes who have done so much just to get us to this day, taking part in simulations and mission planning with the crew themselves. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're talking countless hours just to really rehearse everything for this flight before we get here, and we're here.
Yeah.
We had that successful launch, which still haven't come down from. That was incredible, and everything has gone smoothly so far. Good initial orbit. The burn started right on time, and it sounds like it's going well so far. We are just almost 6 minutes into the burn, so should be just about a minute or so left.
Like you've heard us say many times on today's webcast, prior to launch and after launch, you know, Bob and Doug have rehearsed every single procedure with the SpaceX team for this mission. So everything that they're doing now and have done all day, despite the unfortunate scrub that we had earlier in the week, was just an extra practice test, which was awesome. But you know, it was nothing new for them. They had rehearsed everything, and same goes with this. All of the procedures that we are running through now, and will continue to run through all through the duration of the mission. Bob and Doug have, you know, they are super familiar with what's going to happen and what they're expected to do.
And we should be coming up near the end of the phase burn. Again, this is the first in 5. The next major one's going to be the boost burn. That's going to raise their orbit up to just about 10 kilometers below the station itself. And so they're just going to get closer and closer in these incremental steps. And you'll see in this graphic that when they do these burns, it looks like they're kind of doing a little bit of a loop-de-loop. This graph is in relation to the space station itself. So on one axis, the Y, you have how far below you are, and on the X, how far behind the station you still are. It's not perfectly to scale.
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal burn.
Nominal burn.
And we just heard the two words we were hoping for, nominal burn. So 1 burn out of 5 checked. And so that was the first one. The next one coming up is going to be the boost burn in about an hour and 24 minutes. Before they get to that, though, we are going to be looking forward to that manual flight test where they're going to be taking the reins and they're going to be taking control of Dragon itself.
Yeah, so in preparation for that moment, I highly encourage you all to check out the simulation that we have on SpaceX.com. It's actually an awesome opportunity for you to test your own skills at steering.
Hey, Dragon, SpaceX, we are disabling cameras, and you are go for suit doffing and on-orbit cabin configuration. Note that camera caps, which will be tethered, can be found in location 8, and cameras are currently configured.
Yeah, so as I was...
Okay, Dragon copy, suit doffing in work. We see that the cameras are off, and we can do on-orbit activation.
Copy all. And Dragon, also at your convenience, if you can confirm the gas detectors are off location 14.
Welcome.
Okay, so what's going on at this point is Bob and Doug now have the opportunity to take their suits off. This is referred to as doffing, as donning is actually putting the suits on. They'll actually be able to remove those suits at this time, get a little bit more comfortable in the cabin, and they'll be putting those suits back on when they get closer to the International Space Station. And like I was saying before, I highly encourage you all to check out the simulation that we have online where you can test out your skills at steering Dragon and docking it to the International Space Station. That website is iss.sim.spacex.com. And like I said, you can test your own skills at flying Dragon.
And Dragon SpaceX, one additional note, no need to reply, but the next burn will be the boost burn. And that's in about 1 hour and 23 minutes per your timeline.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely give the Crew Dragon docking demonstration a try. It's a lot of fun. It gives you a pretty good appreciation of just how difficult it is to fly and maneuver in space when you're not just thinking about going forward and backward. You have every axis imaginable that you have to worry about. Took me a couple of tries. I know those first couple I got impatient and flew in way too quickly, and then one time started to spin pretty wildly out of control. So it's probably a good thing I'm down here and they're up there, but it's a lot of fun to check out.
Yeah, I was also really surprised at how many levels of control there are and how difficult it is to actually get them all to work in sync at the right speeds. Of everyone that I've spoken to that has tried it out first, it's unanimous. Everyone went too fast the first couple tries. I was the same. Although by my third or fourth try, I'm happy to say that my decades of Star Fox 64 training finally paid off. And I did. I managed to dock to the station after practicing a few times.
SpaceX Dragon. Check.
And Dragon, you were a little broken, but I did copy you.
How about this time? How are you here on the cabin mic?
Loud and clear on the cabin mic.
Copy that.
We have you the same.
Well, with that first burn nominal and out of the way, the next one coming up in a little over an hour and 20 minutes from now, the next thing we're really going to be looking forward to is this manual free flight. So as we've said quite a bit, Crew Dragon is designed to fly fully autonomous, meaning the spacecraft does all of the navigating and burns to the station all on its own. There are manual override controls, though, on the spacecraft that enables the astronauts to step in, take control should any issues arise. And to test out those controls, Bob and Doug are about to do the first of 2 planned manual maneuvers inside Dragon.
So they'll be using the touchscreen controls that we've seen at various points in the webcast, the crew display panel, and they'll practice putting Dragon in what's known as LVLH attitude. LVLH, or local vertical, local horizontal configuration, means that they'll use Earth itself as a guide and reorient Dragon with the nose cone pointing forward, and the bottom of Dragon, and at the bottom of Dragon, at least from where Bob and Doug are sitting, the Earth will be directly below them. So think of it as they'll basically be putting Dragon in the same orientation as an airplane flying over Earth.
And they'll be taking this manual control, but they'll stop one step before actually sending the command of their attitude adjustments to Dragon's flight computer. So the flight computer itself is still going to continue flying Dragon, and as soon as they're done, they'll hand control back over. The flight computer will reorient Dragon, and it will continue on its way. It's going to fly in a whole bunch of different attitudes on the way up to station. Unlike the space station pretty much only flies in that LVLH. It's pretty much always going the same direction. But that's because it's got very big joints for the solar arrays to rotate around. For Dragon, they'll have to maneuver the trunk to charge the batteries, maneuver to sometimes communicate with the different satellites, depending on which antennas they're using. And so this LVLH will just be a test for this manual flight test.
Exactly. And like we said before, there is that simulation online where you can check it out for yourself.
Yeah, definitely get a chance to go pilot Dragon. We're going to be seeing that tomorrow morning. It was surreal when we got to see it on Demo 1 with Dragon coming in. We've got some great cameras right on that docking port where Dragon's going to be pointed. It's going to be really exciting to see them come in for that final approach.
Dragon SpaceX, no response required, but we are going to be enabling branch 2 of the helium system. This is expected to be done on orbit to protect for a scrub. And Dragon SpaceX, this is just clarification. This will get us back into the expected on-orbit config.
Dragon copies. Dragon SpaceX prop reconfiguration is complete and expected.
Metti uno visual, no audio either.
And if you're just now tuning in, you missed the launch, so you might want to head online and make sure you go back and check that out. But Bob Behnken, Doug Hurley, our two NASA astronauts, are flying through outer space right now after that successful launch just a little while ago. We're going to be bringing you this ground track that you're looking at. You're going to be able to see exactly where Dragon is over planet Earth, and you're going to see a number of different lines, so usually 3 at a time. And so what that is showing is each of those orbits around planet Earth for the Dragon spacecraft. And it looks like it's wavy, but that's because you're taking a globe and then stretching it out flat. And so that's why it looks like, so it is a straight line if you were actually looking at it around the globe. So with that on-time launch, they've already traveled well away from the Kennedy Space Center. They're already downrange, way in excess of 600 miles. But they're going to continue to fly around the planet Earth. They're going to continue to raise their orbit over the next 19 hours. They were successful in doing so with their first burn, the phase burn. That was done.
And SpaceX Dragon for suit doffing. We started a timer for the drying of both suits about 4.5 minutes ago, if you guys want to back us up.
Copy. Timer started for suit drying 4.5 minutes ago. We'll back you up.
And that was the Demo 2 Commander Doug Hurley talking to the core behind us right here in Mission Control Hawthorne. The crew has doffed or gotten out of their spacesuits that they've been in for several hours now, and they kind of hang it up, almost like hanging up your clothes just to dry, and they're going to continue to they have a timer just to know when they're fine to just pack them away. They're not going to have to put those suits on again until tomorrow when it's time to dock with the space station.